Well, good afternoon. Happy Friday, November 29th, 11 months in the books as we getting ready to close out 2024. Hard to believe that. We've got an action-packed week, albeit a holiday-shortened week. We got the new conforming loan limit announcement from the Federal Housing Finance Agency. We're going up from one-unit properties at 766,550 all the way up to 806,500. That's great news. That just means more affordability for more buyers. We have lower interest rates, faster turn times on average. So that's really great news. We also got the Fed's favorite measure of inflation, personal consumption expenditures, kind of overlooked. It actually ticked up a couple of tenths of a percentage point from 2.1 up to 2.3%. And there's lots of media headlines. I saw something on CNN about concerns at the Federal Reserve over rising inflation. Is inflation going back up? But once again here, the devil is in the details. If you dig closely into that personal consumption expenditures report, you'll see that again, the reason we're seeing elevated levels of inflation, if you want to call 2.3% elevated, is due to shelter inflation. And when we talk about shelter inflation, we're talking about rents. And the way that the Bureau of Economic Analysis measures rents is via some surveys, and they're very lagging indicators of rent. If you take a much more robust indicator of rent like the apartment list report, which is a much broader scope survey and also provides a lot more hard data instead of just survey analysis, you'll see that inflation is actually sub 1%. If you actually put in some real metrics that are measuring current inflation and not what it was 6 months or 12 months ago, you'll see inflation is largely under control, and there certainly is no reason for the Fed to panic about boomerang inflation. But the real story this past week is in and around the new construction sales market, new construction homes. We focus a lot on the existing home sales market, and rightly so. That's the biggest piece of the pie. But new sales are telling us something, and it's opposite, or a little lost, I should say, on our Federal Reserve. Let me flip the screen around here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. If you go back and look here at October 19th, you can see housing starts and building permits coming in under estimates. That was a little bit of a surprise, but the market largely took it in stride until the 26th when we got new home sales figures for the most recent month, and they came in at 610,000 against an estimate of 7. That's a 20% miss to the downside on new home sales, and all of a sudden we started to see headlines like this: millions of homes are going to stay unbuilt. What builders see that policymakers don't. In other words, what builders who are operating a business, right? When the rest of us go to sell our homes in the existing home sales market, that's not a business. That's us making a personal decision to move. Builders are building homes as a business. They're not a charity. They're not moving for personal reasons. They're trying to make money. And when they're taking their foot off the gas in terms of new home construction, is it because we see an explosion of inventory? No, it's because they see a shrinking of demand. And why are they seeing a shrinking of demand in the new housing market? Well, you don't have to read very far into this article to see what they're talking about here is interest rates and affordability. Right here from the Census Bureau, housing starts fell 3.1% below September's revised estimates. Building permits also declined, marking a 7.7% drop from October of 2023. Let's go on, take a look at a few more headlines. Troubling numbers for new home sales. And this is really profound when you start getting into these figures. New single-family home sales declined 17.3% in October from September of 2024. New home sales in October reflect a 9.4% decline year over year. In other words, if you go back to October of 2023 compared to October 2024, we're seeing a decline of 9.4%. Why would this be? Well, one reason is it's just getting more and more expensive to build a home, but interest rates for mortgages are remaining elevated, and that's why we're seeing builders start to take their foot off the gas. Hey, builders are not going to build into shrinking demand. That's just not what they do. And so this is an alarming trend. Here's another headline from November the 26th saying inventory of new single-family houses jumps to the highest level since 2007. Sales suddenly plunge. If we go deeper into this article, you can come down here and see this little snippet about Lennar. Lennar disclosed that in Q3, the cost of its mortgage rate buydowns, look at that, the cost of its mortgage rate buydowns and other incentives jumped by 32% year over year, averaging over $48,000 per house sold. That amounted to 10.2% of its revenues. In other words, new home builders are spending 10% of their gross revenue just to make their homes more affordable. And this gets more profound when you pay attention to what some of our members of our Fed are saying. This is Minneapolis Fed President Neel Kashkari, and I'm going to shut up for a second and let Neel talk to you, because what he says in this snippet is very profound as it pertains to the Fed's view on housing.
Think about, back to the notion of a neutral interest rate. Think about a neutral mortgage rate. If we have structurally underbuilt housing and there's a lot of demand for housing, what interest rate is going to clear that market? All else being equal, you would think a higher interest rate would clear that market. And so I think the housing market has its own unique dynamics that are going on that are driving this more than just a macroeconomic landscape and more than just monetary policy.
So the Fed raises its hands and says it's not something we can fix?
Yeah, we can fix it. I mean, if we said we're going to cut interest rates to try to support housing affordability, setting aside the rest of our goals, what would that probably do? That would probably push up the price of housing. And so would that actually improve affordability? And so I don't think monetary policy is well suited to address the structural issues that are going on in the housing market.
Ooh, boy, monetary policy is not there to help housing. That tells you something right there, is that the Federal Reserve is not thinking that they are capable of influencing the direction of housing, that they are capable of influencing the direction of interest rates, and perhaps they're not. But one thing that Mr. Kashkari snuck in there was that he said housing demand remains strong. Well, I think we can refute that. Existing home sales are going to close out 2024 at 1995 levels. And if you're a builder, you're certainly taking your foot off the gas, as you just saw sales plunge 17% from September to October of 2024, with interest rates still up in the high sixes or low sevens. We've got a lot of work to do, and it's going to have to be done on multiple fronts. But the first thing we've got to do is have a Federal Reserve that's willing to help housing. And we'll be interested to see how that plays out throughout the rest of the year as we move into Q1 of 2025. If I can be of any service to you, don't hesitate to reach out, mark.milam@highlandmtg.com.